Hello, good now, and wherever and whenever you are in this beautiful world of Beta and the BetaCodex. I am Ryan Erickson, here of Level 42, to talk about a topic that has come up in recent conversations in LinkedIn, and we haven't talked about it here for a while: individual performance and measurement and management of that, and measurement and management and the myth, as we say, this big old thing, the myth of individual performance. And to talk about that particular myth is my friend and colleague, Mr. Niels Flagging. Hello.
Hello, Ryan. Hello, everybody. Welcome to this new edition, 44th session, I think, 44th edition of BetaCodex Live.
Number 44. We are careening towards number 50, and I think that will be a real celebration. I think maybe you and I will take the candles, the birthday candles, to number 50, the celebration there.
Do something radical with that episode. Certainly, we have to think of something.
Yes, something radical. So in this, I'm happy to run right into this, because I was on a podcast recently and recorded the episode for the podcast. And in this podcast, I said, I don't know whether I got triggered, but said, in individual performance measurements, I said, and this is key. I think I want to talk about the individual performance measurements, as in, I am measuring you according to a standard that I set, right? Managerially imposed measurements. I think those imposed measurements, I said, they should be abolished from all organizations, regardless. Just individual imposed managerial measurements. Okay.
Yes.
I say measurements because that implies there's some measurements in management are different things. So, and through the conversation, so I said measurements, and again, I believe what I said. I'm willing to think about some nuance for it. And in the comments, it was very interesting that there were folks that said, well, you have to measure, or the system will implode. And there's that. People won't know what they're doing. It wasn't necessarily about management. It was about that how will progress be measured. And I think my point didn't get across. That, and that I want to hear your take on this. The other thing, someone threw Deming in my face. That, well, Deming says that the system will collapse. I'm like, where did he say that? I don't know. So I am nowhere near as read on Deming as you, and this person has read. He told me what book he found that in. I'm like, okay, fine. But the whole idea is that, you, a person, a worker in an organization, doing a thing in a small group, a cell, let's even if it's not a beta organization, I am doing this thing, and I am in the work. I know what good work is, and I am responsible for measuring my work. And if that work is impacting others, and it is their responsibility also as co-workers to tell me if my performance is impacting them, right? And if I'm unaware of that, again, so that's one thing. If there's something I'm not seeing, I'm not omniscient, but I know what work is, and I know I have a discernment of the standards. So I set my own measurements for myself, and that's
do we set let's say standards or ambitions for ourselves successfully? Do we really succeed in that? I'm not quite sure about that.
Well, that's part of why I wanted to talk about it, because it's the idea of the idea of managing someone else's performance and ranking them and determining their compensation based on that is one thing. That's a whole other banana. The issue of measurements was the one that was like, well, what do I really believe about that? I know as a musician, I know what good sounds like, right? And if I'm playing with a band, I know what the band sounds like and my part in it. And if I suck, someone's gonna go, you suck. At least that's been my experience. Now, of course, if you're playing with a group of incompetents, that's a whole, again, that's another thing altogether. So that's my opening.
So that's a nice quip, a nice first quip that you just gave it. As an individual in an organization, you cannot perform, but you can suck. I love that. I mean, we want to be strictly scientific here. We are obliged to reason and science, and yeah. So you cannot perform on your own, but you can suck on your own. I love that. I love it. As a musician in a band and as a co-worker, there's no worker, they're just co-workers. That's another way to put that, right? Can we make a step back? Because at the start of our sessions, I usually like to sometimes I jump over that, but gloss over that early on. But usually I like to take a step back and contextualize what is the topic about? The myth of individual performance.
Yeah.
So let's take a step back and then move back into the measurement and the nonsense that's being done with that. So my you want to start to contextualize? Well, why does it matter? What is it?
Because performance as measured, no one's on an island. That performance happens in groups and as groups of groups in a chain, and there's interdependency among people, and that no one person is in control of performance, and that's the basic bit.
Yeah, I like to say that organizations exist because no single individual could do what the organization could do. That's why hospitals exist. That's why schools exist. That's why companies of all kinds exist, because there is no single person that could do what the company can do. Yeah. So naturally, organizations are a vehicle, a tool to make collaborative performance happen, which in turn means that individual performance is impossible in an organization. Otherwise, that individual wouldn't be part of an organization. Actually, even if you are a solo musician, you cannot perform alone, because even to be on a stage, you need a sound technician or lighting, and lighting, you need people in the space and so on. So you never walk alone, right? Individual performance is incredibly rare. Yeah. Not even. I went to a brand new museum of abstract art here in Wiesbaden a couple of 3 days ago. It's brand new. The world's first museum of especially dedicated to abstract art. And you always think, okay, this artist, where did she or he get the inspirations from? And almost always other people are involved, right? Not just that you cannot produce your own paint, your own canvases and so on. That's not the only thing. And not just that you cannot market your paintings or sculptures or whatever you do by yourself. You need a gallerist and so on. But also that the creative process depends on others. Yeah. So you have to always have somebody to resonate with, right? So individual performance, maybe it doesn't exist at all. If it exists, it's incredibly rare. And in organizations, it cannot exist because the organization's purpose is collaboration, so to speak. Yeah. So I think performance is a terrible myth. Does that make sense?
And I think again, the light clicked on in many of our other conversations. What is an organization? What are the building blocks of an organizations? People organizing together in relationship, right? If there was no need for more than one person, we wouldn't have an organization. We would have
exactly
a solo artist.
Yes.
So contextually, that's what we're talking about. And then if you go from you double the size of, or you create, actually this is the point where you're creating an organization by partnering with one other person, right? So I am managing you. What is it about your performance? I'm measuring your performance in this relationship. That just from the very start feels almost,
Yeah, we are pathetic and insecure, and that's why we want to control others. And that's, I think, where the myth comes from. It comes from history. You need to control people. So theory X thinking, evidently. We want to control others. We distrust them. We do not confide that they want to make an effort. So we created this. It's really what. That's why when you suggested the myth of individual performance as a topic for this session, I said, okay, this is excellent because it's so foundational. It's one of the great founding myths of command and control. Yeah, and it's related to so many other topics, like if we do not measure individuals, that's just one of the thousands of offsprings of the myth of individual performance. If we do not measure individuals' performance, everything will collapse.
Yeah,
which is complete bogus, of course. Yeah, has no underpinning, but there are literally thousands of co-myths, I think.
Yeah.
Right. That you can set individual targets, must set individual targets, that you have to dangle carrots in front of people. All these, there's so many myths around this, that you have to appraise people. That the need for appraisal, for fixed targets, for measures, for linking bonuses, compensation into targets, all the kind of individual measures. It's all a package of myths, really, that comes with the core myths of individual performance, right?
Yeah, and then there's the difference between high performance and excellence. Those again, they're shitty words, I think, partially because they're imprecise. What does excellence mean?
There are people
I was going to the thing. Well, what does excellence mean? Well, if you are comparing to a known an external standard, this is not imposed by someone else, right? So a standard of quality, 99 and 6 nines of precision, right? So my work is it's precise. It's not precise. What do I do to help the precision of that work? So it can be, improved, right? Continuous improvement of precise, machining, for example.
Yeah. I find it interesting that you're going into this specific direction, because when I hear about the topic, the myth of individual performance, I think about so many things, like office design. How are offices designed? How do we talk about the heroism bullshit, the high potential bullshit, the high performer bullshit, the ranking that you already mentioned? That's usually individual, not team based.
Yeah.
The language that we use is highly individualizing, usually in organizations, and so. But I found it interesting that you had this exchange with somebody supposedly knowledgeable about Deming, who claimed that if you take away individual measures, then organizations will collapse. Deming said the exact opposite. In my book of quotes,
I looked in your book of quotes and I found the exact quote of that.
Show it to me, baby.
Show it to me, baby. And of course, I put it in the document here because I only did this like 2 minutes before. Maybe I have it right here.
Okay.
It's in my phone. It's in my phone. Don't worry, everybody. Okay. Here we go. Performance of the individual cannot be measured except on a long-term basis, for which I mean 15, 18, 20 years.
Which is so interesting, right? That's the end of the quote, right?
That's the end of the quote in the book. Yes.
I found this because, of course, as somebody who is highly critical of the myth of individual performance, I always look in all my books, and as you know, Ryan, I have a rather big library of business books. So, of course, I'm looking everywhere for this insight. Who are the people who share this insight that individual performance does not exist, is a myth? And Deming is one of the key sources, right,
Mhm.
of this idea. I think I got this idea originally from him. It was very influential on me. And he puts it so beautiful, right? It could be, you could measure individual performance if you have a period of time of 15, 18, 20 years to compare it with others and so on. Then you can measure something, but that's an incredible long amount of time, of course, right? In a way, that's
Yeah.
so gentle. Fuck it.
Yeah.
Put it in a gentle term. Yeah. It's beautiful, beautiful quote. I love it. Because it makes you
Now,
think. Why does he say that, right? Why can you could you only establish an individual level of performance in such a long term perspective, right? Because short term it doesn't exist, it cannot exist. Of course you can ultimately distinguish if somebody has a bigger impact or a smaller impact, but that requires judgment, not measurement. It's a complex problem to judge
Mhm.
performance, not a complicated problem that you can fix with or solve with measures or
So,
targets. Yeah.
so this comes into again another conversation I'm having about the
Mhm.
asshole problem, right? So if you're on a
Yes.
team with an asshole, how do you again this
How do you
there's an
know?
assumption about it. Well, how do you know it's an asshole? Sniff. So in an alpha organization, for example, there's with you have the performance rankings and all that kind of stuff. A low performer, you can tweak the system to exit them, forcefully. Um, and in a how do we deal with bad actors? This is it in a I say because myself I'm thinking, well, you would know if you're in a beta environment, right? That assumes some things. You're in an intimate group, social density. You have this sense of radical, I would say, transparency. So this
Yes.
whole idea that's going on, and everybody can see this dude is either not producing the results that help us move forward, doing the complicated things, and or is just a toxic person, is antagonistic,
It exists.
is being an asshole. So that to me gets to a point of conversation, dialogue, and truth with each other about, hey, we have firing authority as a team. We have authority to do that. I think that's another thing I wanted to talk with you about,
Mhm.
that in an alpha organization, well, I can't get rid of this asshole. I've got to go complain to the powers that be to prove to them that he's an asshole so they can get him out, or her, or they.
Yes. You have to escalate conflicts, yes. And in a
Yes.
beta organization, you should usually, normally, in most cases, deal with trouble, conflict among a team. Yeah, yeah, within a team,
Yeah.
without delegating it up. Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
And
That is okay.
yes, so that says, well, okay, then endeavor in a transformation to reassemble your organization as small teams, build in uh, the cell structures to support social density and sportsmanlike competition amongst. I mean, I can roll into that, but the the how do you kick somebody off the island? I think is for performance reasons is um, is something that I would imagine in alpha, as I've seen it, that's really one of the primary reasons that performance measures are there. As far as certainly for incentive compensation, but also um, as a shield to litigation for the company. Say, well, this person is performing poorly, and I have every right to fire them for cause. So
Yeah, but is lack of performing really the main reason for firing somebody? And in my work, for example, when Silke and I do open space database transformation with clients, I wouldn't say that those people who ultimately will leave or will have to leave for some reason, one reason or another, you can never say, did that person perform or not perform? It's never a topic. The real question is that person totally toxic? Is that person working against everything? Is that person humiliating other people, or concentrating power and abusing it? Is that person doing something wrong? Conceptually, something might be something totally. Let's say in the work, that person might be doing something terribly wrong. So is it? I think we are over accentuating performance and under accentuating how we get there. So we are trying to discuss outputs instead of improving stuff. Really, right?
Yeah.
And I don't have to wait a year to see if an asshole is badly performing. It's sometimes the opposite. A person seems to be high performing. Again, high performance doesn't exist individually, right? No. But a person seems to be productive, constructive, whatever. But when you look closer, it isn't so, and then that raises. So the hard decisions, I think, they're not at all based on bad performance. That's an alpha myth as well, that you have to rank people, that you can rank people, that you can somehow objectivize decisions of sacking in this, and I don't think that's a thing.
That if something can be quantitatively measured, right, and as in there's a reality test that you can do with that thing, and there is a gap between the person's skill at executing the process to do that thing, then that's an issue of compassion and education, and to do this thing better, there are ways of doing that. Maybe it's a knowledge issue. If there's a knowledge gap, well, then pursue the knowledge. Don't. And that's a totally different issue. If that kind of performance is an issue, why would you exit someone? And that it was just totally different than someone. I can hit all the numbers. I can. And again, we're just talking the abstract about. I've got the numbers to support me, and I can tell you to fuck off no matter what. So and you don't get to. You're going to get to tell me, no, you suck. I'm awesome. So you get to be exited. That's a different problem in kind. Yes, you can't fix asshole. I think that's part of it.
Yes. Yeah, no, I'm struggling with if I would agree or disagree with what you just said, because again, I think there is always, and I see that in our clients, but it also, I mean, with Red 42, we have had a couple of employees, colleagues, especially before COVID, we had, and we never would have talked about performance. We talked about things. Do we want this person on the team? Does she or he solve problems or create more problems? Is it worth? Yeah. Do we get the output? Do we get the output from the person? I mean, the inputs are money and our time as founders, for example. Do we get an output? Does that person really want to accomplish something? Otherwise, why would that person, does that person benefit from being part of the team, or does she or he suffer? That kind of stuff. So would we ever discuss performance? I wouldn't say so. We would marvel at one person's how she would get things done, and then we had a guy on the team at the same time who didn't get done anything really, and that got me really angry at times. Despair. I got despair in despair sometimes with that person. So we had this discussion. Does this person really finish the job, or does she only cause us trouble? Isn't that the more realistic approach to? And of course, in alpha organizations, when they get bigger and when people get the opportunity to hide in individual offices and behind indicators and individual targets and performance evaluations, then you find it harder and harder to judge. Is that person really contributing something? We wouldn't know. We have 20 analysts of something, and nobody knows. So that's the disadvantage of functional division, of isolating, of this learned helplessness. I think that alpha organizations develop. You create organizations that are so socially distanced, and of course, this is one of the disadvantages of too much homework. How is it called? Being at home working.
Work at home, remote work.
You can judge the results, maybe. Home office. Having people sitting in home office, other people cannot observe the process so much and do not have that much interaction of all kinds. So, but still, in many cases, then you can judge. For example, lawyers. You can judge a lawyer's caseload and measure that. That doesn't mean
and their win percentage.
That kind of stuff. But then that gets tricky, right?
Mm-hmm.
Should you do that? So you really have to start judging them. Are the cases similar? Is the amount of success, the success rate to be expected, similar, and so on? So there are rare examples where some measures are simple, but usually you do not even have that kind of thing. So I think these miserable output indicators are overused. That's why we advocate in relative targets. We advocate to use simple team measures, economic ones as well. Team results, really, like team profit and loss, because that's something that's reasonable. That's about a real result, not some intermediate bullshit result that you can manipulate. Like OKRs are usually totally muddled up,
incoherent
indicators that are put together and then compared against the target. So people say 70% is an excellent outcome, but of what? Why?
Yeah.
What are we talking about? Is it still profitable? Yeah?
And there are situations. Again, I worked in help desk for a few years, and I enjoyed it very much. And there's very distinct and discrete measurements in that job. How many calls did you take? How many tickets did you solve and resolve? How long did you spend on the call? And all of those quantitative things.
But wait. How much time do you spend on a call? That's a classic. I love that.
Well, I love it too.
But what is good?
Exactly. But I was dealing with this. I love that, because there is. If someone has approached me with a challenge, and that I want to help them get through that challenge, the last thing I want to do is just say, "Ugh, too hard," bonk, and get them out of my face. What this maybe just Ryan, I want to help them for as long as it's realistic to help them to get them through the problem. And if I get to a point where I don't know what I'm doing or talking about, then I get help for that, or go from there. But why? And if I have the knowledge, well, a lot of problems are simple, where they may be, complicated for someone else. And hard problems, difficult problems, messes take time. Why would you rush through it? Then you end up with crappy solutions, and then you're not really addressing a problem. So yes, it's important. We always talk about context. Well, surprise, surprise, context does matter. So
and I think the call center example is very, very helpful. John Seddon from England, he wrote about this more extensively, why you shouldn't measure stuff like the amount of calls, or the call's duration, or that everybody picks up the phone after maximum of 3 times
response time.
Which is all bullshit, really, because you can manipulate all these things up to a point where to have shorter call times, you hang up on clients and generate more, which might be beneficial on 2 indicators, right? You just hang up on people so that they have to ring again.
And you close tickets when they're not really resolved, so you get a high resolution rate.
Exactly. The more indicators you have that you force people to maximize, the more trouble you get into. And of course, most call centers produce their own calls in a way through deficiencies. And the measures themselves produce sub-optimization. So that's like, yeah, measures, individual targets are trouble. They always lead to gaming. They are always under complex because, and this leads us back to our topic, because there's no such thing as individual performance really. So we shouldn't. But it's hard to get rid of the structural arrangements that are made according to that myth, right? It's not so easy. You cannot just say, we do not believe in individual performance anymore, and it's done. You really have to change your system of targets, your systems of measurement and reporting, your pay systems often. You have to eliminate performance appraisal. By the way, I visited a seminar by Tom Peters once in Zurich. Mm-hmm. And the only thing that he was adamant about, or the greatest moment, was towards the end when he started a rant against performance appraisal. How stupid performance appraisal, and that the minimum that each of us should do in our sphere of influence was to eliminate performance appraisal, and he was totally right about that. Right, this idea of appraising people's performance is in so many ways ludicrous and hideous. Really.
It's antithetical to driving fear out of the organization.
Yeah, it's highly effective in creating fear. Fear and loathing, I wrote down here when you started talking about individual. It creates fear and loathing in companies, right, to have individual measures.
I'm going to write that down for it. There's an episode in there about something, about fear and loathing in your organization.
Of course, this refers to the book and the movie with Johnny Depp. Right? Fear and Loathing in Las Vegas, which is
Hunter Thompson kind of thing.
Exactly.
Yes. Now, we went into a little Gen X that kind of
yes. So in short, I mean, there's no individual performance. There are contributions to performance. Performance happens in the space between people and not by people. It happens through people, not by people. So many ways to put it, and this is really essential. You cannot build a self-organized team or organization if you still believe in individual performance. You will never truly succeed, because you will always end up blaming, tagging people in certain ways. You will over-accentuate measures, which you brilliantly explained already. What happens then? Yeah. To me, this is one of the like a meta belief. The belief in individual performance is there are so many collateral beliefs that are all antagonistic to self-organization, to modern work, and we have to get rid of it. And of course, literature is totally possible. I mean, look at authoritarian and paternalistic thinking, like talking about leaders and leading all the time. They are all, organizational Stalinists by and large. That's it. And
I lost some audio there, but we ended up with organizational Stalinists.
Performance. Can you overcome these?
I hope I've not lost Niels here. I was going to go into something. I wasn't going to go into the Stalinist piece, but I was going to talk about competition that I also maybe somewhere we'll do when Niels comes back. Is he here? Is he not here? Let's see. You're back? Are you there? Hello, Niels. No. Oh my gosh. Something has happened in Wiesbaden. I hope not.
What happened? Did something happen with my internet connection? It seems so.
Yeah. You're pixelated right now. I heard about organizational Stalinists. I think we had Stalin in there at the end, but it was spotty there for
Stalinism. Yes,
Stalinism before that.
Maybe that's somebody got revolted. Some internet goblin
An
got
internet troll or gremlin came in
felt on puppy.
and so I want to
Sorry
shift
for
this a
this.
little.
Yeah.
No, it's okay. I wanted to shift it because I think there's another issue there about competition, individual competition, and that there's a way that, because again, I don't know the psychology of it. There are individual sporting events where individual performance happens, and this is kind of
Yes.
like the solo musician, and also there are individual rewards for sporting events, for games that you opt into and you play.
Yes.
In an organization, I'm trying to get to a place where it's like, when does individual reward, does it make sense? And is there a real, what kind of competition is generative, right? This, we talk about collaboration, small teams, that not pitting individuals against each other in a functional area, and those being inhumane, unethical, however we want to say, negative patterns. And there is a desire to say, I'm doing a good job. I feel confident. I'm experiencing joy at work because I feel the sense of accomplishment. And there's, so how is that sense of accomplishment? What are the leading indicators to help that sense of accomplishment, as opposed to, I'm really struggling with some way to say that there is a sense of individual accomplishment. Where does individual accomplishment play in the world of decentralized and democratic beta organizations?
You mean for individuals?
Yeah.
Career advancement and personal growth stuff? That kind of
Individual
thing?
flourishing. Well, not even, because that's the long term, right? That's the 15, 18, 20 year kind of thing, I think. I'm trying to get to the just to try and understand.
I think one of the paradoxes of today's organizations, most jobs, not all of them, is that we do not. There's this beautiful quote by Ernst Weichselbaum that a farmer can say at the end of the day, a farmer can say, "My day's deed, my day's the workload is done. Yeah, it was a good day. Yeah. So you finish something as a farmer on a farm.
Yeah. Sense of completion. Yeah.
Yeah, you have a sense of completion, which is denied to today's office workers and most factory workers as well, right? So in the way that today's organizations work, a great example are most office workers. They do not have a daily opportunity to feel accomplishment. It's taken from us by the way that we organize work today. Of course, some professions are different. Maybe a brain surgeon might sense, okay, today I did 2 or 3 or 4 operations, surgeries that, well, good, nobody died. They're all
nobody died.
Right? Yeah, of course, that it exists, right? I'm not saying it doesn't exist, but most office workers do not have this sense of accomplishment and this daily rhythmic feeling of accomplishment. It's taken from us. So it is, for example, that's why I love sending out when somebody puts an order on the Red 42 website. I love most of the time sending out the stuff, because it gives me, send out another 20 envelopes or boxes or whatever. It gives me a good feeling. Doing that occasionally. And these things again are rare in many work environments. Take project people, where the sense of accomplishment may come after months or years or never. That's why for me it's hard to write a book, because it takes a long time until the book is done, from idea to done. So you don't have that continuous sense that you're progressing, that you are getting somewhere, that you are performing in a way, right? And that's like the backdrop of it all. The other things are consequences, like the belief that you have to measure people. It's because with industrial age, measurability, it first seemed to exist. Daily rates for
piecework.
Piecework, yes, exactly, or time-based work. But if you take these industrial age concepts away, as we have it today, then it gets really tricky. How to even for the individual psychologically. And it needs to be recognized. I think we need to recognize that the individual can feel incredibly lost in the office, or in today's knowledge work. People can feel incredibly lost. And this is something that Peter Drucker wrote about extensively. And I read a book of quotes. What would Drucker do?
Well, Niels, that's why we need leaders. We need leaders to help people feel that sense of control.
To fill people with a sense of
safety, or the warm, comfortable blanket.
And we need superheroes. It's like in The Boys, right? We need superheroes. Superheroes are soups. We need soups.
We need Homelander. We need
Homelander, exactly. Firecracker and A-Train, etc. The seven.
Oh my god.
I think it's very. I think Peter Drucker. That's what I loved about putting together the Peter Drucker book. I got more systematically into all his writing about knowledge work. And he put it so differently. There's a risk in knowledge workers, our age, that we get lost in our careers, disappointed and lost, and do not feel. It's difficult to advance. Have a growing career. I think the only salvation for office workers, for modern knowledge workers, is to get recognized as team members. To work in sync, or in sync,
in group flow, camaraderie, esprit de corps.
Yes, that's very important in work, and we see, of course, but you made me think of the cultural context as well when you just explained a few things. The American context is, of course, that everything seems to be measured individually. Whenever I visit the United States and see sports events on television, all the shit that gets measured in America, baseball and the Moneyball stuff is a great example. All these game statistics, sincerely, we don't have that much statistics in sports. Not nearly as much as in the United States.
And football is a lot harder to measure.
What Alfie Kohn talks about, all this ranking and gold stars that you get at school. So, of course, in America, but also I hear in France and in countries like South Korea, all this ranking, all this judging the individual all the time from kindergarten on, it does something to us, right? It of course it establishes belief that everything is individual competition, that you have to be better than others instead of collaborative with others. And of course, in education, there's a huge damage being done in educational systems in the United States, in France, in South Korea. It's less in other countries, of course, but those are extreme situations.
Yeah,
right? Extreme cultures.
Well, and it's all in the first 12 years of education, of public education here in the United States. And again, not knowing what the system is like in Germany, after the 4th year in high school and 12th grade, well, there's the valedictorian, right? One of the students, or now it's 4 or 5 or whatever, but somebody gets to talk at the end of the year and celebrate themselves. And they get to give a speech, and
like the best student, right?
They are the best.
Well, but it's not important. Nobody would kill themselves.
Yeah. Well, and here's an interesting fact. Well, I was the valedictorian of my high school class, and it didn't matter a whit, really. I think having that experience, it gives me pause to think, well, what value was it? What value was it for me to be competing with these other folks? I wasn't competing with the folks. The kid who was number 2, he was incensed. He was so mad that I entered the school with a higher grade point average than he did, and he never eclipsed me for some reason. And it was such a sad thing, right? So why aren't we working together on outcomes and on learning, on self-organized learning, on learning together with each other, for each other? And that now looking back, I think, wow, what a lost opportunity. What a lost opportunity.
Yes, and I mean, science is pretty clear about, again, we can only recommend Alfie Kohn's work, I think.
Oh, yeah.
On this, who doesn't get tired to cite the research as well that proves over and over that collaboration among learners, among students, among children, and so on is always better, leads to better result for everyone than competition. So, yeah, this myth that competition is good for performance, individual and collective, and so on. It has to be driven out. We have to work actively against it, which is why we're having this conversation as well, right? And again, there's no scientific proof whatsoever. It's stirring up competition among people at work or at school, among school children. The evidence is clear that that doesn't work.
It doesn't work. Doesn't create superior outcomes for organizations or groups.
And it's clear that it even hinders and blocks and thwarts outcomes in learning or performance, if you say. So yeah, I think that's something I read. As you know, I was recently in France during the election, and one of the reasons why the extreme right in France got so successful or more popular, one of the main reasons it is so is that it's attributed to the fact that in France there is a high level of competition in kindergarten, school, universities, and there's endless talk about meritocracy in the education system, but it isn't so. People know that there are elite people like Mr. Macron, of course, like all president people, people who are part of the elite. They do not necessarily have merit. The individual doesn't need it. There is a whole system, of course. So there's endless talk about being better, beating others, performing better individually. But it's also fraudulent stories because everybody knows that the cards are stashed in a certain way.
Yeah, some people have a head start because of their.
Yeah, there's this hypocrisy leads to a cynicism that then leads to extreme right voting behavior, or a sense of that if everybody, I'm being fucked by society, this is an unfair society, this is all fraud and a lie, so I hate the elites, so I hate the country, I hate myself ultimately. It's so there is an incredible danger to our democracies in embedding so much competitiveness, so much gradings, all these gold stars, and how does Alfie call that? Gold stars and
ribbons.
All this meritocracy. It really, in the long term, it is endangering our societies because it erodes democratic values.
And I think it's important to define merit and what if you're judging.
Exactly. Very hard to judge.
Yeah.
Only in the long term warns us. Right.
So this leads me into a discussion about engaging with the sponsor, right? Because if someone has in an organization, I'm going to make an assumption here, and I fully want to hear where I'm missing it, that if a person has risen to a position of authority as a sponsor in an alpha organization, there's the assumption is that they have gotten there because of they have in the dog eat dog world of meritocracy, they have exceeded in success in their individual performance, right? So they have a story that they have told themselves that they are there because of their past and what they've done.
Yeah.
Their merit. I got here on my merit. I pulled myself up by my bootstraps, which again, who knows? But there's that. Now, why would I, as a sponsor who has worked so hard myself, I have worked so hard to get here. Why would I want to tear all that down in a system that benefited me so much? What so have you encountered that conversation, or have
No,
you encountered that conversation? You know how to
no,
count. So
I never hear that. I never get that, because I think there's an obvious reason, I think, because people who are sufficiently enlightened to understand that performance is not an individual thing, and they did not, CEOs, general managers, or what you're talking about, right? Executives, they did not get there solely by merit, but also luck, connections, vitamin C, as we call it.
vitamin C. I've not heard that one before.
No, okay.
But that's interesting. Connections and
And of course, also because they might have a specific profile that suits the organization, or that fits well with the organizational system at play. But I think I would never even get in touch with a CEO who believes that I'm here just by merit because I'm so great. That's why I'm CEO, and nobody will ever be able to follow in my footsteps.
Why would you have gotten a call from somebody who believes that, right? If they'd heard you speak or seen you write at any point in any time, why would they contact you about that?
That's why I believe it's always healthy to get healthy in your life, to get sacked at least once in your life, because when you get sacked, you cannot fool yourself that you are totally successful all the time, first, and second, you will wonder, okay, did I deserve this? Am I a loser? And you will probably think, no. Okay, so that makes you think about when I'm successful, when I ascend, when I have a positive career happening, that it might not be just your merit either. It's not your merit when you get fired or sacked, and it's not your merit when you have a career progression. It's not like that. There are so many factors at play. So I think, people I work, but nobody ever would tell. I think nobody would ever say, I grew in the system. I had my career in the system, so let's not overcome the come out of control alpha, because I suffered so much. Others should suffer as well. That's I think what the kind of teenage spirit that's dominant in American college groups. How are they called? These Delta
fraternity, sorority,
fraternities. That's the imbecilic,
the animal
testosterone-driven evil asshole spirit that exists in fraternities. But most people grow up after a while. I believe that hardly anybody is so imbecilic as to say, okay, I progressed in alpha, so it must be the right system, or only geniuses can strive on alpha. No, right? I think that's another myth. I think that all executive CEOs and general managers are also like assholes. I cannot believe in that shit.
Oh no,
or that they are all psychopaths. But of course, alpha organizations are perfect for psychos. Also,
maybe to succeed in an alpha organization requires a facility at playing the game, right? Of knowing the rules of the game and exploiting the rules of the game.
Yeah, but that doesn't mean that those profiting from these conditions and have a flourishing career, that they believe that it is the right thing, the only thing,
right?
Without it, I think that's too much. Just because at least those people who become sponsors in Open Space Beta, they all have a pretty critical view of the career systems that exist, and they know, okay, I might be CEO here. Well, our last client here, a German company, pharmaceutical industry, I think she had
High
a very
volume consumer goods.
high, high volume consumer goods. For example, on her team, she knew that it wasn't, let's say, the inner circle of 10 executives or the larger group of 17, which was overblown, I think one might say. And she didn't have the illusion that everybody had risen by meritocracy, and you know it yourself. If you have yourself risen through the ranks, you know that it's not a fair game, or that it's not based on merit, actual excellence, brilliance, or whatever. Right? But there are other factors at play, some of which might be good or bad or neutral. No?
Well, yeah. Well, it's that whole package of stuff that is outside of your formal authority, right? All of those things that play into who you are and how you engage with other people, what you do in your job, who you happen, well, that, and then the chance part of it, who you happen to run in, where and how, and gain well, and it's about the quality of the relationship. You know, if you are a toxic flaming fire of garbage, then it's unlikely that you're going to have positive relationships in a working
yeah,
environment.
And also there, I mean, that's you recently did the myself at work psychometric diagnostic, which is based on Big Five psychology, and this psychologic research based on Big Five, it shows that certain inclinations in personality profiles are not statistically not so conductive for having a corporate career or for having a strong career. There's that phenomenon called neuroticism. It is not, that doesn't mean that an individual cannot strive who has a high level of neuroticism in Big Five. But statistically, it's not the best thing for a career to have neuroticism, a high level of neuroticism. It's still possible. You can still be happy. You can have the greatest life and the greatest career, but it is not conducive to have a corporate career, for example. Yeah? So there are certain, personality characteristics with, in a way, and of course we can all work with that and make the best of it, or not. So this does by no means say that certain personality traits, or in this case inclinations, in Big Five, that they rubber stamp you for anything. But statistically, scientifically, we know that there are certain
don't you say patterns or heuristics?
Like most CEOs in Germany are called Andreas, and that's the most successful. It doesn't, yeah, and there is a suspicious, let's say, among CEOs in Germany, for example, being tall is helpful statistically. Being tall. So there are other utterly irrelevant characteristics, but what's most important is that merit is only one facet of career. Individual merit is hard or impossible to measure. I would say hard to measure. That's what Deming says very reasonably. So and it's totally overblown. I think we shouldn't ask the merit question all the time. We should ask what's the outcome. That person has 100,000 in salary. So do we get the 300,000 out of that person's work that will help us? That will allow us to employ this person.
Well,
you cannot measure that out of a management system.
Well, that sounds a little bit individualistic, though. If I'm paying you €100,000,
that's why it is tricky to do.
Yeah. So, well, how do I know?
But you have to judge that. But you have to judge that constantly. Do we want to hire this person who will cost us 50,000 a year, or 100,000, or 200,000? And what will we get from it? That's the basic thing. You have to judge it. You cannot even measure it, but you judge it. You must.
Well, that
Oh,
and I think you said, well, you said it earlier on too, in that by I'm talking to this person, I feel that I understand them, they know what I want them to know now, they have curiosity, they're a kind of person that I want to work with. And what okay, so there's that, and if I pay them this, I would expect that their net impact to the group, to the organization, to the team is that it is
yeah.
more. It
Yeah.
outweighs the cost.
It's threefold or something. Yeah. Yeah. Why?
Yeah.
Does it fascinate you as an
No, it doesn't.
economic thought?
No, it doesn't fascinate me at all. I
It's
think
not
that
something that you can or should measure. It's just that you should, again, to judge in complexity, in complex context is very important. And I mean, not judging the person, but judging the economic balance between the salary and the likely outcome that you
Mhm.
think might be there or should be there.
Well,
No?
well, yeah. Well, that's judgment. That's the messy stuff that happens in here, right? That we have to make to make our best assessment of reality as it exists
Yeah.
and what we
Yeah.
know of our interactions with people, and yeah, and create our best judgment in the moment, based on what we know, and not set some kind of target that, oh, if we
Exactly. You
don't
just have to.
make,
Because the most
yeah,
important economical decision is to hire a person and pay that person that salary. And that means you must be worth it, which is the greatest
well,
thing, right? When you hire a person, you assume that she or he is worth that money.
well,
Actually, 2 or 3 times that money. That's what you need to get in the normal context. And we're
and I
talking
think,
about absolute exact numbers, of course. But if you hire a person, you must always there must be some economic logic saying this is worth it.
there's a return on investment. I guess that kind of is
Yeah, I do not like
a way of
that. I don't
saying
like
it, but
that. But it
um,
makes sense, and the economical sense is that, right? We
well,
expect that this will be worth it.
I think this, because we're getting into a topic actually that I wanted to put on the docket for the future, was
Oh,
about conditional income, right? And that in the beta language,
yes,
it's participation versus incentives,
yes.
right? So how does that also implies that, well, if I don't have my individual incentives, then how do I judge my my financial what's my financial motivation? Well, that's where we get into what the participation and what profit sharing is, and how is that developed in an alpha to beta transformation, which is interesting. I think the idea of, it's easy to say, you hit this number, you get above that number, I am going to pay you X percentage of that,
Uh-huh.
right? It's a little different to say, like you're saying, this person is worth, they're worth,
That's the base salary I'm talking about, right?
yeah,
The base.
the base salary, they're worth a higher base. Like, everyone is worth a higher base. We pay people. I think there's a quote there, right? Pay people fairly, and then
Pay them well, pay them
pay,
fairly, then do
yeah,
everything to get the money off people's minds. That is Afikoren as well. Yeah,
yes. So
yeah.
thank you, Alfie. Thank you, Niels, for that. But yeah, that's and
It's just that I use that quote so much. I have it. I have it.
well, but I would imagine that that again, this may be the fact that people who encounter you already know the answers to some of these questions, is that, well, um, how do I uh, I guess it was about the individual incentives, getting rid of individual
Yes,
incentives,
yes, yes.
that
Yeah.
um,
Carrotization is bad for you.
carrotization, carroting people to death. Ah,
Carrotize and
so
die.
money can be measured, right? Profit can be measured. It must be measured because we have profit and loss statements at the periphery, and that we pay
For
internally
organizations. Yeah.
for the resources we consume to order to create the value that's created. So yes, there are things that can and should be measured, right? And that there is a sense of progress and forward motion, that survivability to a business, because a business has to have money to exist. Very basic, stupid stuff to talk about. Of course, there has to be profit.
Yeah, I would
Yeah.
argue that measurement only gets you so far, and in the context of judging performance, evaluating performance, it is paramount that you start not to believe in numbers, but to question numbers and compare numbers, and again judge and judge and judge, not judging people but judging context.
This is
So
actuals to actuals comparison,
exactly, and that
and
raises questions, right? Why are some teams at Handelsbanken in the branch ranking? Why are they higher? Why are they higher performing? Why do they have a better performance in that indicators than other? The ranking doesn't give you the answers. You then have to ask the really hard questions. Why is there a gap between the top performing teams and the low performing teams? And is this really bad, or is this just a new branch? Yeah. So this, I think, this is one of the collateral myths, that you can judge numbers and indicators, which is that's why I think OKRs are so popular. They seduce us again to judge the numbers and believe in numbers, and they give us this sensation of objectivity, and all of that is a myth. Yeah. Because again, what we can measure is just the complicated bits of reality, and the complex bits of reality are unmeasurable, like love or excellence or success. Even profit is not an object.
Merit.
Huh?
Merit,
What?
even, you think?
Merit. Exactly. Merit is an incredibly tough concept.
What is merit? Yeah, if you think about it, just for merit is this abstract that you say, oh, that person has merit because it X,
And
Y,
it
Z.
is more, and it is of course very much an ideology as well. I'm not sure if I like it, the idea of merit. Because if you believe in merit, you will naturally start to divide and to distance people from each other, and again, we want social density, which is the opposite. So team merit would be the much better word, right? Than merit.
Well, this is maybe another distinction to make, is between merit and mastery, right? What is the difference between merit and mastery?
Yes, of course, exactly. Much better. Yeah, much better.
Hey, maybe there's an episode in that. So I thought of it as you were mentioning about, we can't measure love. Of course we can't. And then Deming, this is just because I get all my Deming knowledge from this little book, by the way. This one, yeah. It is wrong to suppose that if you can't measure it, you can't manage it. That's a costly myth. So that kind of had me stop. Well, we can't measure the complex, or shouldn't measure the complex. But it must be managed. Well, what needs to be managed in complexity?
Yeah. What is that supposed to be?
This one, what is Deming talking about there? I mean, now at an hour and 8 minutes, I go into what the hell's inside Deming's brain, but
love that. Thank you. Yeah. Anything else to add? I'm happy.
Yeah, I think we're good. I feel complete. So have we effectively debunked the myth of individual performance? Those of you who are out there, judge for yourself.
Exactly. Please comment.
Comment.
Please
tell
comment,
us how
discuss in a nice way, please, in a non-competitive way, in a collaborative
in a collaborative spirit of collegiality, right?
So. Also, what's new is soon, very soon, we will publish the new BetaCodex network white paper number 21. There will be a separate video I intend to record. You just corrected it again. Thank you for doing all these corrections.
My pleasure. My pleasure.
We not just worked it, we reworked it and reworked it. So it will probably be.
We worked the system of that paper.
Exactly. And next time we are likely to have a guest. We are likely in the next episode to discuss that white paper with. So He's
So
the
we
author of the paper. Secret single author of the paper.
the secret single special. I'm trying to think of another S word to say about
Soup.
this adjective about this.
She's a soup.
Soon.
A soup, like in The Boys.
A soup. Or they're super authors. So thank you, and let's do this again next week, shall you say?
Yes, I'm looking forward to that. And please, everybody who's watching us, leave a comment. Take up the argument. Tell people. Go tell it to the world that individual performance is a sick myth.
Go tell it on the mountain.
I thought of that song as well.
We're there with it. All right. I'll see you next time, Niels. And hey, everybody, thank you so much for the precious gift of your time and attention. Be more beta.